Hello and good evening, everyone. My name is Boshaga, and today I'm your host at the Shout Show. And joined with me here is a very, very interesting guest, Sasibai Kimis, and there's a lot about her. I want to start off real quick by sharing a little bit about her, and before we jump into the questions. And for all of you who just tuned in, Sasi has left a very successful career in the finance industry, and she started the award-winning social enterprise and luxury craftsmanship brand Earth Air in February 2013. She's one of Wharton's 40 Under 40 award winners in 2015 and was also an Eisenhower Fellow in the 2015 Women's Leadership Program, focusing on the issues of social entrepreneurship, ethical fashion, and innovation. Perhaps one thing that really struck me as completely extraordinary is the fact that she left such a demanding job and definitely a job with a high prospect to pursue on her passion, especially when she spent a lot of time dealing and looking into the rural and impoverished community. She did her undergraduate in the US and she has worked in multiple places spanning across New York City, Ghana, the United Nations, and many, many more. And today I'm hoping that we could unravel a little bit about her journey and to dissect her professional experience in building up Earth Air to where it is today. And for those of you who've been keeping up to the news, Earth Air also recently has made tremendous mark in supplying over 7,600 PPEs for medical professionals during these COVID-19 times, which is estimated to be up to 160,000 Malaysian ringgit. So I want to get into the impact. I hope that we'll be able to get the privilege to learn a little bit about her journey in Earth Air and as well as to answer all of the questions from our fellow audience members. So, Sasi, how are you feeling? How are you today?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks, Prashaga.
Awesome. So, let's take things back a little bit. Perhaps let's rewind the clock to the moment where you started Earth Air. Could you give us in a brief overview on how Earth Air started and perhaps color in that first 6 months for us?
Well, as I mentioned earlier to you, I mean, I normally spend like an hour talking about this. It's quite a long story, but I mean, a summary version would be, I kind of grew up feeling that, well, not that I experienced poverty myself, but at an early age, I was able to experience the lives of others and seeing that the life that I had in Malaysia is in fact a very privileged one. The fact that most Malaysians have houses, have toilets, have running water, have electricity is a luxury in many parts of the world still. So kind of having that awareness and then different events that happen in my life. For example, I lost one of my close high school friends in September 11th in New York. And then I had almost like a near-death experience, in Malaysia. And so it kind of, all of these things sort of coupled and made me kind of think about really, what am I doing today that will outlive me? Are any of the things that I'm doing today going to be meaningful and impactful in the lives of others? So I really started thinking a lot about what kind of legacy am I leaving? And so with a lot of soul searching and also in my career, I had sort of gone between working in finance, and then also working in the nonprofit charity sector. And, both sides didn't make me feel like it was the best medium, in the sense that what I mean is when I was working in New York or when I was doing investment banking, it was very much about, okay, how much money can we make? How can we maximize as much money as we can? I mean, for ourselves and for our clients. But very few people really thought about poverty, right? And then when I was in Ghana and working with the UN and working with an NGO there, it was very much about how can we help as many people as we can, but we're always struggling for money, right? So it just felt like both of those were extremes. And I think that was kind of how I started thinking about this idea that why can it not be where, why can't we do good, but earn money so that it's sustainable and it keeps going? So my master's thesis when I was in Cambridge, I actually wrote about Muhammad Yunus. He was
Right,
kind
of
of the
course.
first person that sort of really brought the whole idea of social entrepreneurship to the global, audience. And so that was sort of like, the seed that I started thinking about. And that was in my early 20s. So fast forward, I came back from London, I came back to Malaysia, and I was working at Khazanah. And this was when I was like in my early 30s, and I started, when I had the near-death experience, and I was like, okay, this is it, no more faffing about. I've really got to do what I believe in, and I don't know what it is yet. So I actually took time off. I didn't work for almost 2 years. And I was doing like consulting projects to kind of survive. And so I took time off to travel. And in fact, a lot of the foundations of Earth Air being founded were, sort of built during that time. Because that was when I was in Cambodia teaching English and building schools. And I met with a lot of weavers and sex trafficking survivors. And it kind of just, this desire kind of just came about that what can I do to help these women? What can I do to help these communities that I'm seeing? And that I actually had no intention of starting a business. It was very much like, let me just try and help them do what I can. That was really all I thought I was going to do. But then in early 2013, I met with someone I consider like a mentor, and he's an impact investor, Dr. Kim Tan. He then said, look, if you really want to help these communities, you have to start a business so that it's going to be sustainable and you can keep helping them. And I was really scared. I mean, I went to business school, right? And I wrote business plans, and I know what you're supposed to do theoretically before starting a business. But when I was starting my own business, I didn't do any of those things. It was just very much like, okay, these people need help, or I want to help. What can I do? Okay, let's do this. And I just kind of went and did it. So in that kind of circumstance, the first 6 months were probably the some of the most difficult times in terms of my identity. As in, I had an existential crisis at that point because a lot of my self-value or my self-esteem, had come from the work that I was doing or the amount of money that I had been earning, right? And the sort of influence I had perceived myself to have. So when I suddenly didn't have that, and I was sort of like a nobody, I had no, I didn't have a fancy job or nice salary or whatever, and I wasn't traveling on business class or, like the sort of comforts that I had been used to, and then suddenly I didn't have them. And I particularly remember this point in time when I was doing our first pop-up. I had set up a table in Bangsa village, and I think it was like Mother's Day, and I had like our scarves displayed, and one of my ex-bosses came along. Like I saw him
Oh
across.
boy.
At that point, I took a toilet break because I was like, I don't want him to see me. But why did I feel that way? It's because at that point I was in a way like embarrassed because I was like, oh no, like he's probably gonna think like, what am I doing with my life? I'm wasting my time. Like instead of doing what I was doing, I'm now standing behind a table with a whole bunch of scarves. And so I kind of thought like my status had dropped, and so I kind of had to deal with that within myself, as in like, why am I doing this? And, is it just to like feel good about myself? Is it really for me to make an impact and all of these things? So, but I didn't give up. I kept going. And of course, the first 6 months, as you mentioned, Brushaga, they are some of the hardest because, I mean, in fact, for me, it was probably the first 3 years, because
Gosh.
those first 3 years were the years that I really had to figure out what is Earth Air's business model? Is it even going to be successful? Are people actually even going to buy the stuff that we're selling? Is there a
Yeah.
decent value proposition here? Can I even create a brand? Why would people want to trust this brand? Or, I mean, and that point in Malaysia in 2013, most people didn't even know what social enterprise was. So a lot of people didn't understand. They were like, "Are you an NGO?" And I'm like, "No, we're not. We are making money, but we're making money to do good. So I would rather that you buy this product than give us a donation, right?" And so some people were suspicious of that because they said, "How can you do good and be making money? If you're doing good, you shouldn't be making money out of it." So kind of like helping people even understand what we were doing and why it mattered to pay the people that we're working with fairly, and why it's important to think about who makes the things that we buy, right? Like, why should we think about the humans behind the products that we buy? So there was a lot of education that we had to do. And all those first 3 years, I didn't pay myself a salary. I really survived based on my savings from my working life. And I did consulting projects. So I did a lot of freelance consulting to like survive. I ran my business out of my bedroom. All the stock was in the living room of our house. My father would come home and be like, "What is this? Is this a warehouse? Or is this a house?"
Gosh.
So, I mean, those times are hard because that's when you're like, "What the heck am I doing? Even worth doing?" But like you asked, when we were speaking earlier before this started, is where is the tipping point, right? So for me, it was, I think by year 3, we had already gotten quite a bit of media attention, and because no one else at that point was really talking about this very much. So we had quite a bit of media coverage in Malaysia. And then I think the tipping point for me was there was 2 things that happened. One was, this happened in 2015. So in our 3rd year, we won the British Council Social Enterprise Award, which gave us, I think it was about 30,000 ringgit. And part of that money was to help renovate a physical space to open up an Earth Air studio. That was one. And number 2 that happened was getting the Eisenhower Fellowship, because at that point, I was so burnt out. I was mentally exhausted. I actually thought, I feared for my mental sanity at that point because I almost thought I was depressed. But going to the US on the Eisenhower Fellowship really changed things for me because I met a group of amazing other women leaders from around the world. And I met with a lot of people in the US who were so supportive of what I was doing and gave me a lot of new ideas. So I came back from the fellowship and decided I'm not going to close Earth Air down. I'm going to give it one more go. And after that, here we are. We've kept going, and 2016, I paid myself my first paycheck. I hired our first employee, who is now my business partner and our CEO, Xiao Cheng. Yeah, and so now, we've been paying everybody salaries, and we've actually bootstrapped. We don't have any external investments. We've built the business purely in our own revenue. Because that was important for me. I needed to feel like if I'm trying to educate or tell people that the social enterprise business model works, then it needs to work on its own. I need to make sure that this business is going to survive on its own revenue. I didn't want to like raise investment capital and then like build revenue, which is kind of what, most people do.
Most people
But
do,
for
right?
me, I didn't want to do that lah because I kind of always thought about my dad, and I was like, my dad never got free money. If he needed to build his business, he had to go take out a loan, right? So you either it's like make or break, right? If you really want to make sure your business model works, you make sure that you can survive on the revenue. There's obviously different schools of thought on this. Some people think that's stupid. They're like, you shouldn't be bootstrapping. You should get money earlier on, and like so that you can scale and you can build revenue faster. But for me, I think coming from the corporate world, it was important to me because I wanted to prove to people that social enterprises can still make money and survive without free money.
For sure. I'm completely on you with that one. To have like the proof that the product actually sells, and people believe in the idea for long-term sustainability. I want
Yeah.
to bring you back a little bit to the time you mentioned how your dad would ask you about the products at home, and the time where you were behind the table selling goods. That was
Yeah.
quite a switch from the professional line all the way
Yeah.
to standing and talking face to face with customers.
Yeah.
So did your mentor continue giving you tips, or did you have to mostly learn as you go by?
Well, Dr. Kintan unfortunately didn't live in Malaysia. I mean, he was very supportive. But I think the way that I survived through those dark times of, is so this is one of the key piece of advice that I would give to others is first of all, don't start a business alone. Always start it with other like-minded people, at least one other person, so that you don't lose you don't become crazy. Otherwise, you're doing everything yourself. You have no one to talk to, and you're going through like hell and high water at different points. And if you don't have anyone to share that with, you could break down, right? So
Hmm.
a lot of these moments can be very, very stressful because, like I had moments when I was crying in the toilet because I had maxed out my credit cards and I didn't know how I was going to pay it back. I had creditors, or, I didn't know how I was going to pay them back. And, you know, so I would sit in the toilet and cry, right? But if you don't want to do that, hopefully you can have another smart person who believes in what you guys want to achieve together and you can do it together. So definitely start a business with someone else. Of course, that also can have its own pitfalls, like, if you don't get along and there's like issues with
For
that and
sure.
stuff. So, but I wish I had like someone else with me from the early years, because then things could have grown a lot faster as well, instead of me by myself trying to do everything on my own, right? Because I was doing the meeting the artisans, the designing, the production, the sales, the accounts, the like business development, everything. So you're like a one-man shop and you get so burnt out. And I was also the one doing the pop-ups, right? So I was doing like pop-ups sometimes like 6 times a month, and it's exhausting. Like I'm carrying all the stock, putting it at the back of my car in the
Right.
boot, and then unloading everything, and then taking it up in a trolley and setting up a table. And and you're thinking like, why am I doing all this manual labor,
I
right?
know it.
And
Yeah.
there was a question that my dad asked me at one point. He's like, look, what was the revenue that you made for your little social enterprise? He's like, that revenue that you made is like 1/5 of your yearly salary. He's like, you could have just continued working and given that money away. So he's like, you'd have had more impact than what you're doing, right? And he was right if you look at things from a financial perspective. But for me, in my head, I wanted to create change in Malaysia. Like I wanted to build a social enterprise business model. I wanted people I wanted to help people understand why, treating humans who are making our products fairly, why is that important? And most of all, I wanted to create an awareness for handmade products in Malaysia because honestly, like when I first started, like people would ask me like, hey, this bag is made out of mengkuang. Isn't the material
Mm.
free? So why should I have to pay 100 ringgit for it? Then I was like,
Oh
madam,
boy.
mengkuang takes 2 years to grow to maturity. It takes 1 week to process it and it takes another week to weave. And these skills that these artisans have, I mean, I tried weaving, okay. I still am not successful. I've been doing this for 7 years. Weaving is a skill that you like learn since when you're a child. So you're getting an artistic product. You're getting a product that has deep craftsmanship in it. And just because you grow the raw material or you can go and source for it in the forest doesn't mean that it's cheaper than some factory that's just importing the product from China, right? So it's like kind of educating people about the value of handmade products, about the value of heritage, about the value of um, Malaysian culture, And so, because for me, I felt that if we don't raise the value of handmade products in Malaysia, the artisans in Malaysia are forever going to earn like really low prices. And believe me, young people, I myself included, I am not going to learn a skill like weaving if I'm going to earn peanuts for it. I'd rather go and work in 7-Eleven or in a factory, which is what a
For
lot of young
sure.
people are doing. So if we lose the next generation and they don't earn enough from doing this, then we're going to lose our heritage. So it's very important that the products that are being made are fairly priced for the person that's making it, and there's a fair value for the product. So it's like you are appreciating the craftsmanship and the skills and the heritage that goes behind the product, and you should be paying for a good quality product. So my philosophy has always been buy less but buy well. So don't go and buy a 5 ringgit t-shirt and buy like 50 of those and just throw them away. Buy a
Mhm.
higher quality t-shirt that will last you for a few years.
Got
Sorry,
it.
long
No,
answer.
no, 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 no. It was great. It was fine. I want to build on onto the part where you mentioned bringing out the artisan's work to the market,
Yeah.
and this is something that I'm curious, and our audience are curious too. We got quite a bit of questions on this. It's mostly related to your first pop up when you brought the products out, right? I believe
Mhm.
I mostly started with scarves in the beginning. Uh,
Yeah.
Two things. One, did you do anything different to set the product, to give a little bit of unique, exclusive points on that? And two, how did you deal with customers that just had a lot of questions? Did you try persuading them and educating them, like how you shared earlier, or did you just give them just a brief concept and kind of go on to the next customer?
Well, okay. So the reason why, so I think part of it is also because of my life experience, like because I've lived in different parts of the world before I came back to Malaysia. So that also helped me understand that what I saw in terms of the quality of the product that I was seeing that the artisans made was actually very high quality, right? So I could see someone walking in the streets of New York wearing our product, right? So then like I knew that it was like for me it was well designed, it was well made, and it was a high quality. So then I was like, okay, I'm willing to invest in this and grow this because I believe in this product. So that was number one. And I created a brand from the beginning, right? So why? Because I feel like it's psychological. People are willing to pay for brands. And if they trust a brand, if the brand has a good reputation, people will be willing to buy from that brand, right? So if you have products that are unbranded with no name, nothing, then there's no attachment that you have, there's no perception of value that you can attach to that product, because there's no brand to it. So a lot of like handmade products in Malaysia, like the artisanal heritage products that we work with, are unbranded. So early on, we started with I started with that, and early on, it was also very important to me that quality and design were paramount. Like, I didn't want to be like having a shop where we're selling trinkets for 1 ringgit, 2 ringgit, 5 ringgit. Like, because when I go to Central Market, that's what I find, and I don't want that.
Yeah.
I want
Mhm.
I don't want like products that you make en masse with poor quality, but they're cheap. So I wanted to make products that I myself would want to use and like, and of high quality and are well made and good value. Um, and of course, honoring the person behind the product, right? So these were some of the things that were important to me when I started at that. And sorry, I forgot the second half of the question that you asked.
No worries. The second half of the question was mostly on when you started the,
Oh, questions that people
the
ask.
first,
Yes,
yeah, and
exactly.
people
Okay.
were to come in, how would you deal with them?
Yeah. So, I mean, okay, so this is another piece of advice.
Actually, it's a
Learning,
tough one, isn't it?
learning how to sell is
Mm-hmm.
one of the most basic life skills that every human being should learn, right? And for me, like, in all the jobs that I had in all of my career, I had never really been on the sell side of anything. Um, um, you know, our clients came looking for us. And so I didn't have to like try to convince people. And, I had never worked, like in a bazaar selling food or whatever. I had never done that before. So our very first pop-up, my sister was with me, my sister Puma. And when people came to our table, she would go and talk to them. She'd be like, "Oh, hi, how are you today? Can I help you? Are you looking for anything?" And me, I'd just like stand behind the table and be like, I mean, our products look great. If they want it, they can come and buy it. La. If not, don't buy la. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I really didn't have a good attitude. Um, and so that took me a while to learn, to like actually talk to clients, to learn how to like engage with people, like how to make conversation, and then like find what the client needs and then provide a product or service that they need and will make them happy, right? So these are, basic life skills that I had to learn along the way as well. So when people asked a lot of questions, I mean, in the first year, I've had people throw products at me, like clients who
Wow.
come and they'll be like, look at it and be like, oh, what's this? Then like, oh, why is it 100 ringgit for a silk scarf, like hand woven silk scarf? Why isn't it 20 ringgit? Because people automatically think that if something is made by someone in a village, then it should be worth like $5, right? Um, so instead of actually looking at the real quality of the product and what you're actually getting for what you're paying. So there was a lot of awareness building and education that we definitely had to do. I had to do like, so all of my media interviews, this is what I would talk about. I would talk about why it's important to think about the person that made it, why it's important to think about the process of making the product, like that consumers should ask questions. All of us
Of
should be
course.
asking questions, like who made this? Where was it made? How was it made? You know, did how did you treat the waste from this product? Like, you should ask the brand that you're buying from, whatever you're buying from that brand, like how do they do all of these things? You should do research, right? So it's kind of like encouraging people to ask questions is not, not everyone was used to that idea. And not everyone was used to the idea of like fair labor and fair trade and fair prices and things like that. So um, there was definitely a lot of education that had to be done in Malaysia. But then the flip side of that is because we were one of the early groups that was doing
Right.
that, we people kind of know that that's what we stand for. And last year we got certified by the World Fair Trade Organization, which we had to go through intensive audits for. And so now it gives consumers that buy from us the assurance that we've been audited and we do what we say. We don't just say something, right? Yeah.
Indeed.
So all of these
And
things, I would say, you need to think about, because unfortunately, because you're saying you're helping people, people are going to like ask you a lot of questions. If you don't claim to help anyone and you don't claim to do any good, no one will care, because they just
right.
look at the product. They're like, oh, how much is it? Oh, okay, I like it, I'm going to buy it. But as soon as you say like, hey, we're a social enterprise and we're working with marginalized communities and we're helping refugees and then they'd be like, oh, how are you helping them? What are you doing?
Mhm.
How much are they earning from this? Where are they? Like, so because you are saying certain things about yourself, then you have to have the right evidence and proof for what you're saying you're doing. So unfortunately, the bar for social enterprises is higher than a normal business in that sense, because you're not just trying to make money, but you're also trying to create impact, and you also have to prove to others that you're creating impact. So it almost is like quite stressful, because you're trying to do all of those things at the same time. Yeah, yeah. So that's why I also think that it's very important to evaluate your business model and figure out whether you can make money early on. Because if you don't make money, if your business model is not sound, then you can't help anyone anyway. So that's the first thing that you need to figure out is, making money so that you can continue to do the good that you do. And making money is not just making money for the business, but sustaining yourself. So I know so many social entrepreneurs, who, like me, didn't pay themselves a salary for many years, right? And after a while, you can't cut it anymore. I mean, you're human, you have to pay rent, you need to eat, you need to take care of your family. So you need to make sure that you can earn something from it. If you are not, then you have to shut it down, or figure out a way that you can make money and make it sustainable.
Wow. Yeah, for sure. And 3 years was a long time to like pay yourself after that. I want to build on a little bit on the business model part. Oh, and before that, I love it how Earth has got like a very nice breakdown of exactly what you mentioned, who the money goes to and how many percent. I
Mhm.
believe it's 31% for the artisans. That is not many social enterprises actually have that, and
Yeah.
I was really
So
very very happy
I
to see
can,
that.
yeah, I can actually tell you the reason that precipitated that. So
Mm,
I've always wanted to do that, right? But so one of the brands that I admire is Everlane. And that's what Everlane does. Like if you go to their website, every single product is broken down, so you know exactly like the price that you're paying, where is that money going, like what is it paying for. And so I always wanted to do that, but we didn't really come around to it. And so for what you see on our website is specifically for that product range, and every product range has its own specific breakdown, because every product range has different material costs, has different artisan costs, has different marketing costs, etc. So that's sort of like a representation of um, how we break things down in what we do. So for me, the reason we ended up doing that finally, like, we got a kick in the butt to actually finally do that, is because we had a bit of a PR crisis, I guess, because our bag, which was being sold in which is being sold in Sogo, like our bag was sold for like I think 200 plus, and people started commenting like, oh, I can buy this bag in my kampong, my grandma can make. How come it's 200 ringgit when I can buy it for like 40, 50 ringgit, right? So people were starting to ask questions. So then we had to explain, 40, 50
Mhm.
ringgit is for what quality, and 40, 50 ringgit is the cost, right? It may be the actual cost of the product. It doesn't include the transportation. It doesn't include all of the other things that we've done to the bag, because our bags all come with leather handles, inner pouches. Um, so when you explain all of that and you actually break down the price, then it actually makes sense. And, people see that, hey, Earth Air is not making like some killer profit from this. We're just making enough to survive so that we don't shut down, so that we can pay the artisan and we can be a sustainable business. Because in the end, right, a social enterprise is an ethical intermediary because you have middlemen, normal middlemen, right? In a way, people will be like, oh, isn't Earth Air just a middleman? And I said, well, we are an ethical intermediary. We're not just here to buy low and sell high. That's not what we do. And we don't just buy, we design the products ourselves with the artisans, So a lot of the products that you find on our website you don't find anywhere else because they are our own designs, right? So, and of course, as Earth Air started growing, we started seeing like more and more similar products like our products in the market. So then, when I spoke to other brands about this, they were like, look, you just have to keep innovating because no matter how big you get
Oh
or
my.
how small you are, or whatever it is, people may copy you. So you just have to keep innovating that by the time they copy you, you already started making something new. So what they're selling is already like last season or whatever. So innovation in design in your product or in your service is very important because how do you make your product difficult to copy? So that was one of the key questions that I had to think about as well in building Earth Air is, so initially though we started with just buying whatever the artisans had. Very quickly I started designing and the products and making those products as exclusive as we could with the artisans, so that they don't make our designs for other people and they don't copy other designs for us, vice versa. So it's kind of like an honorable thing to do is you don't copy other people's designs, just in the same way that you hope other people don't copy yours. Yeah.
Mhm. And I love that. I really love that. Absolutely. On the transparency with the artisans and to constantly innovate to try something new. I'm glad you brought out the innovation part there. Sasi, I want to ask a little bit about the target market, right? In the process of innovating and thinking about your audience,
Yeah.
since the Malaysian market, they weren't too comfortable with a steep and high price, at least to them, before they understood. Did it ever occur to you that, okay, why don't we open up a store perhaps overseas or, to partner up with different brands or different organizations? Has that ever occurred to you? And if you have, perhaps you could share an example of how that worked out.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of why we sell online, is precisely because of that fact. Because if you convert the price of our products in US dollars or any of the other stronger currencies, they're actually not expensive. Or, if even if in Malaysia they may seem more expensive. Because I think in terms of like positioning, the way we've always thought about Earth Air is we don't want to be making trinket products, right? So we're not in the like 1 ringgit, 10 ringgit market kind of products. But we're also not at the Louis Vuitton, Hermes
Yeah.
kind of products,
Mhm.
right? So we're kind of like in the middle. Like so you're getting a good quality, long-lasting product that will, that will last you for years, but the price point is in the middle, you know? So it's not in the tens of thousands and it's not in the 10 ringgit, it's in the few hundred ringgit kind of range. Yeah. So, I mean, that was kind of purposefully why that was done, because, I didn't want our products to be out of reach, but then at the same time, I didn't want the products to be priced so low that people don't even
Mhm.
appreciate handmade products. Yeah, so it was very important that it was priced in a mid-range pricing point. Of course, there has to be value for it as well. I'm not going to pay myself. I'm not going to pay a few hundred ringgit for something if it's not going to last me for at least a few years. So, in that same way, like I have to think about the consumer's point of view and how they are investing their money in our products.
Cool, cool. And speaking about that, can I ask you more about your audience members, especially now? You had to innovate a lot on how you got your customers. Are they mostly based in Malaysia, or have you seen a lot of expansion overseas?
So I would say that at the moment, almost 70 to 80% of our clients are still from within Malaysia, right? And in Malaysia, we have tourists, expats, um, Malaysians, and corporates. These would be the four like buckets of people that buy from us. So corporates meaning like companies who buy for events, and they buy like gifts from us, VIP gifts or door gifts from us to give away. And then we have uh, tourists and expats and Malaysians who buy for themselves or buy as gifts for their family and friends abroad. So that was one of the gaps that I saw in the market when I started Earth Air, was that in Malaysia, my choices were very limited if I wanted to give a made in Malaysia representing
Mhm.
Malaysian heritage product, right? So there are a lot of different foods I can buy, but when it came to like actual, something that is quintessentially Malaysian that people can use, a product that people can use in their everyday lives and has a story about it and is made ethically and is fairly priced, like there weren't that many options. So then I felt like, hey, like if we can create products like this that people can use, not decorative, not souvenirs, not
Mhm.
decorative. So it has to be products that people can use. So for me, that's very important. Like I feel like, we should create functional products, not things that people buy and then put in a shelf as decoration or whatever, right? So as much as possible, the products should be functional. Um, so now, where I would say at least about 30% of our sales are from outside of Malaysia. And because of MCO, we've definitely had to like really innovate a lot more and try to think about how can we get our products international, like how can we distribute more internationally? Because we really recognize that like our products have a lot of interest outside of Malaysia. So we just need to get them out there. Like for example, like last year, I was at the Global Refugee Forum in Geneva with UNHCR, and I mean, we made we made so much money in like 3 days, like almost what I would make in 6 months in Malaysia. I
Wow.
made in 3 days in Geneva. And partly it's because of the currency, partly it's, the event, but it really opened up my eyes that, there really is a lot of demand for our products.
Mhm.
It's just that people don't know we exist. So we need to start thinking about that, exactly like what you said about trying to get distributors, trying to get our products on like international websites and things like that.
I'm pretty sure that your story at the convention also helped, right? It's a very unique story on helping out the artisans, and it must have touched a lot of lives.
I mean, to be honest, there are so many businesses that are working with artisans, or like so many different social enterprises around the world, right? But I think a lot of people ask me specifically, like, because especially like people from the corporate world, because I was like them, right? As in, I was a banker, or I was,
Mhm.
sitting on the other side, and then now I'm here. So, people can relate. People in the business world, in the corporate world, can relate to me, and so then they kind of like, because I think people think that if you're starting a social enterprise, you're either a hippie, or like you're a tree hugger, or they don't take you seriously. Or sometimes I feel like there may be perceptions, I think, in the business world and the corporate world, where they think that people in the non-profit world are like not as cool, or as them. But so that's obviously a very erroneous kind of way of thinking. And when I think when people hear my story, then they're like, oh, she was one of us, and now she's gone to the other side. So let's ask her questions, because she knows what we're like. And so I think there's some kind of relatability there. And so I speak to that, definitely. So I do speak at companies and things like that. And the other place or venue that I like to speak at is actually at universities and schools, because a lot of young people like yourself, and the people who might be watching this, they come and ask me like, oh, I want to do good, I want to save the world, I want to change the world. How do I do it? Where do I start? And when I speak, that's normally what I talk about. And one of the key things that I talk about is writing a personal mission statement. So from me, that is another key piece of advice that I got from another entrepreneur friend, is to write my personal mission statement. So taking time to write that helped me um, decide which opportunities I should take and which opportunities I should say no to. Otherwise, you're just coursing through life, you're just doing whatever comes along, and but at some point you have to know why you're doing what you're doing. For me, I didn't want to be like 60 years old, look back at my life. Okay. I mean, 60 is not so far from me now. Okay, 70 years old. Look back at my life and think, oh dear, I don't know what I did with my life. What have I really done? What have I really achieved? Like, I didn't want to feel that emptiness. So for me, I decided, in my early 30s, that, okay, I don't want to just do something for the sake of money. If I'm going to do anything, I want it to be because I believe in it, and I want to wake up every day believing in it and jumping out of bed to go to work. And to me, that is what Earth Air is. Like, people ask me like, what do I do every day? Every day is different. Like, I've been running Earth Air like, I mean, 7 years, right? And um, every day is different. So I'm still learning new things. I'm still learning new skills. I'm still having new challenges, and that's what keeps me excited about working with my teammates, and the work that we do. So I think for me that's very important. You see, because otherwise, there were in my previous corporate jobs, there were days where I felt like I'm just doing this to get that money in my bank account, and I don't feel, my heart is not in it, and then you feel depressed. And I'm not saying that everyone can go and do this, because sometimes I actually think that having the opportunity to start your own business is sometimes a luxury, because not everyone may have that choice. They may not have the choice to be like, not think about money and do something that they love. They may not. So it's a very hard decision to make. But for me, I decided lah, it doesn't matter if I'm like a lot poorer. I had to change everything that I thought about my future, my lifestyle. I had to change my last lifestyle drastically from, because I had to live in a different way. I had to live by by the what I was earning, right? And so I had to change my life, and that's not an easy decision to make. And that is probably the hardest thing to do for most people is if you're used to a certain lifestyle, how do you give that up and then do something that may not give you the same lifestyle? Mm.
Hmm. And for someone on the outside, right, just watching that, I'm sure a lot of people must have went, wow, are you in the right sense? Did you think about it well? And throughout that whole journey, you must have gotten quite a bit of judgment from people outside. So I guess, switching on the gears to more of your personal mindset, how did you deal with that judgment of making the switch, of constantly waking up day and night, putting out fires with your team, a switch in life? How did you deal with those judgments?
To be honest, the judgment was very often like, oh, you're doing such a noble thing. And then I was like, no, I'm not actually. I mean, as in, I felt like people were not judgmental in a negative way. They were always like, oh, you're like kind of edified me too much, which I, you know, was not so comfortable with, in the sense that I think like I don't think that I'm a hero or I'm anything special or anything. Like I think the single mother, like an everyday person who's like going to work every day, struggling to put food on the table and feed their family and take care of their family, like they are heroes. It's not about like what we're doing or what I'm doing is like more noble than someone else. Like I don't think of it that way. It's just that I feel that this was my calling and my station in life because I feel that I have been given a life of opportunity. I have been given a life of privilege. And that came from my father and my own family. So my father sacrificed himself. His parents were illiterate. My grandfather was a lorry driver, had a bicycle shop, and my grandfather could not read, my grandmother couldn't read. My father was the first generation in his family that went to university. And he then built a business. He educated my siblings and I. And so for me, I thought, I have had this opportunity. So I want to give back to others who have not had this opportunity. And so I don't think of it as me being noble in any way. It's more that I just feel like this is the right thing to do. And in a way, it is a privilege to be able to do this because, like I said, not everyone may have that option to like not work and earn a lot of money to support their family. So for me, I made the decision to adjust my lifestyle. Also because I've had plenty. So because I've had plenty, I am willing to give that up and live with less. Yeah. Um,
Understood. Do you think that, if you hadn't made that switch, while being in that finance world, if up till today you were still there, do you think there would still be a nagging feeling that you didn't pursue your dreams, that you didn't
yes,
attend to that calling?
definitely. I mean, because this feeling in my heart had been something I had since I was a child. Because it's not something that like it just came upon me one day. It came from when I was a child, like when every time we went to India and my father would take us, to where like our family came from, and I saw the villages like where a lot of my relatives lived, and I saw poverty, I saw lack, and so I always grow up with that understanding that, like I said earlier, right? And there was a defining moment when I was growing up. It was when I was 16 years old. My grand uncle, my grandfather, my paternal grandfather's brother, he had worked his whole life in Malaysia to save money for his family. And then he went back to India. So my father and I went to visit him. And we went to visit his daughter. And so I was like, oh, Akka, like, where is Tata, right? And she's like, oh, he's outside. And then I was like, I didn't see him. And I walked outside the house. Someone that I thought was a beggar lying on the floor with the dog smelling him and the flies all around him. That was my granduncle. So it really broke my heart because I was like, this man worked so hard his whole life. And then now in his old age, like he's suffering like this, because his wife refused to take care of him. And so anyway, my dad and I, of course, like, got him medical attention and what he needed, but he died a week later. And so at that point, I
That's
thought,
right.
I don't want something like this to happen to someone I love. So I want to make sure that I can do the best that I can and the most that I can to help others who I need. And initially, like when I was, doing investment banking, I thought the answer was to make a lot of money, right? Because I thought, okay, poor people need money, so I should just work and earn millions and just give money, right? But I'm not saying money is not part of the solution, but money needs to be put into ideas. Money needs to be put into people who are going to execute change, because money in its own, it's not going to change things, it's not going to help people. You need to put money into change makers who are going to create change. So then I decided I'm going to become that change maker. Like I want to be the person who's going to execute that change, who's going to carry out the solution or come up with a solution for a problem that I see. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I think a lot of the young people that you mentioned, who've started their own social enterprises are also feeling the same way, because money is part of the equation, but who is going to do the work?
Mhm.
Because I can raise money, I can get people to donate money, but and there are lots of people that have money, but who is going to like actually do the hard work of making sure that the solution is creating change? And therefore, you need those change makers, and hopefully, the money that's out there finds the right change makers to support them and help them do what they do.
Indeed. That's so cool. I mean, knowing that your work and yourself, you're able to create that impact and to let someone live a better life, be it artisans or be it anyone, that sense of satisfaction, I doubt anything can come close to compete with that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I remember having a conversation with one of my Wharton friends when I was 17. Like, I told him that if my life had impacted just even one person, right, my life would have been worth living. I mean, because that's really, I mean, to me, that's how I measure my life, or like, what I've done. So for me, even if it's just one person that has been changed by what we're doing at Earth Air, then fine, so be it. And that is good enough for me, right? And of course, you want to create scale, you want to impact as many people as you can. But it's not about the numbers. It is really about the quality of change that you're creating. Yeah. So I've never really held myself to the ideas of like, oh, I must, do millions and millions and millions. No, it doesn't matter if I'm just reaching 1, 10, 100, 1,000. If as much as I can, I do the best that I can. And that's really all, that's the yardstick that you can have for yourself. You do the best that you can. And Oh, this brings up another piece of advice. So, in your journey, as you're building your business, do not compare yourself to other people, because you can look left and you can look right and you see, like, oh, how come this person is getting this opportunity? Or how come this person is getting this much sales and revenue and how come I'm not, right? Don't compare. Your Stay in your lane, do what you're doing, and do what you believe is right. Do not steer away from your values and your principles. You know, it may take a long time to get to success. It may take longer because you're doing everything in the right way, or you don't want to take shortcuts. But believe me, when you get there and when you are sustainable and you are earning enough money, right, it feels good because you got there justly. You didn't get there by exploiting people. You got there in a way that you can sleep at night and you have a clear conscience. That is priceless. So that's one of the lessons that I learned along the way, is to not compare and not look at time and not look at circumstance. Like, is if I believe in what I'm doing, we're sustainable, and the speed of our growth, I'm not going to like compare and be envious or covet other people and what they're doing. That is their journey, that's their opportunity. One day my opportunity will come, as long as I do what I believe is right.
Awesome. I mean, absolutely well said. Just hearing to you, I mean, it already gets me to be super inspired. Wow, Sasi, we're almost reaching towards our time. I was hoping I could slip in one more question, if you don't mind.
Sure. I'll try
All
to
right.
be as brief as I
No, it's
can.
fine. I'm just a little mindful of your time over there. Uh, but this one
I'm
is from
okay. I'm fine, don't worry. Yeah.
awesome. Awesome. This one, we've got this one question from one of your fans, all the way from Russia. And
Mm-hmm.
her name is Anna. And what Anna does is she runs a little social enterprise, just started 4 months in, that
Mm-hmm.
hires people on bicycles to go out and deliver insulin to diabetic patients. So
Okay,
they
so
kind of
like
do
last
this.
mile delivery.
Right,
Right.
exactly. So they're doing this because all delivery have basically stopped during their lockdown over in Russia. And here's the question. The question is, it's of course not sustainable to go on without paying the volunteers a salary, and she's in the middle of figuring out that process. And she's worried that if she puts out something, if she starts selling something, it would change the perception of the business in the eyes of society. So her question is, what product can I sell? Or is it okay to start charging for services? And when do I know it's okay to start? How does one go about the monetization
Okay,
parts?
so this is a bit harder for me to answer because I didn't start with a model where we're providing services for free, right?
Mm,
Um, but what I can think of is definitely, like, even if people are, more marginalized, they would be willing to pay for the service. So maybe if it's just like, even if it's just like 1 ringgit or 2 ringgit or whatever it is, right? I mean, in terms of like, I can't, I don't know how many rubles it is to send delivery, but there is a value for that. So people would be willing to pay a fair price and a fair value for that. So I think one is definitely start charging for the delivery. And another thing would be, what other products would diabetics need other than insulin, right? Are there food products or chocolates for diabetics, or,
mm,
like products that could be delivered for diabetics? And and in fact, of course, you can deliver a lot of other things as well, but I think to not dilute your message, if you're staying with the message that you're doing deliveries for diabetics, right? If that is your value proposition, then with insulin, you can package that with other products or medical tools or medical aids that diabetics may need. Maybe it's to, the glucose meter, or maybe it's the glucose strips, or so you're also delivering those products. And you could add, you could buy them wholesale or negotiate a wholesale price, and then you would earn the difference between the wholesale price and the retail price as your margin. That would help go towards supporting your business and making it more sustainable and helping you pay the volunteers.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yes, of course, right? Build on towards the other parts of the niche there. Awesome. Okay, so now I wanna. This is something I have. I should say I'm actually curious about. When I
Yeah.
was reading about Earth Air, when I was reading about Earth Air, I stumbled upon the PPEs on
Mm.
how the team, actually helped to make about 7,000 ish PPEs to help
Yeah. More
bring
than
the front.
20,000 pieces.
Right, right. Apologies. So, can you story us like how did that journey start? Maybe real quick. Like, did you approach the ministry first, or did they approach you? How
No,
does one
actually.
get into that?
So it really started from the fact that, I mean, first of all, I must say I was very like dismissive about the whole pandemic, because before it hit Malaysia, I was like, yeah, what is this? Like, and at that point, like, I hadn't even started buying masks, and
Mm,
then as it was getting closer to the lockdown, it was getting harder and harder to find masks. Like every single pharmacy I went to, like all the masks were sold out. And so at that point we were like, hey, what are we going to do? Like we can't even find masks for ourselves, right? So at that point, like we were actually approached by World Fair Trade Organization, and then they said there's another social enterprise in Hong Kong and a doctor in Hong Kong who had tested a design. It's called the Hong Kong mask, HK mask, and they were willing to share the design. Like, they made it open source, and they were willing, and WFTO was willing to like share the design and help us through the process of making masks. So we were like, oh, okay, sure, why not, right? Because we couldn't find masks for ourselves. So we actually started working with the refugee tailors, and started making masks. And then as we started making masks, then the whole issue with frontliners came along. It was like frontliners didn't have enough PPE and couldn't import enough, couldn't buy enough, and the whole world had stopped. So, whatever stock you had in country was all that you had. But luckily for Malaysia, we actually had a lot of factories that were making the non-woven material. So the fabric that is stitched into PPE, we had factories in Malaysia actually making those, and they were considered essential services. So they were still able to operate. So we quickly contacted like a couple of hospitals, contacted other social enterprises. We kind of like crowdsourced designs for PPE from many different places. And within 1 week, we had started PPE production. So this was like end of March. An early part of the MCO, we had already started making PPE. And of course, we are not selling the PPE at that point. We were donating them. So we actually, started campaigning online on Facebook, on Instagram, and on our website, asking the public to donate to us so that we could make PPE and donate it to hospitals. And it was very important to us. Again, transparency of pricing was very important. So we made sure that we split the cost to help people understand exactly what the money they were paying for was going to. So every set of PPE that we were selling was 21 ringgit 50 cents. So you knew how much was going to material, how much to labor, how much to transport, how much is covering earth, air's time, um, and how much to logistics and things like that. So all of that was clearly displayed so that when people donated money, they knew what they were donating to. And in the end, we ended up raising more than 200,000 ringgit, and we made more than like 20,000 pieces of PPE. Yeah.
Wow,
So, and
that's huge. How did
yeah,
you
I mean,
coordinate between the artisans? It's a
that was
lot.
like kind of a lot of things happening at the same time. Like we didn't plan it, but there was a need. And, like our hospitals, it was kind of like your country needs your help. What are you going to do? So we were like, okay, great, let's get into action. And so we just started sourcing for the materials, getting the designs, and we started like raising money, raising funds, and making them. And you know what? The refugee artisans that we worked with, the tailors, they made more money they made like more than a year's worth of income in 2 months. So not only did we help frontliners, so many refugee families were supported through this project. So to me, that was it made me feel happy lah, because Malaysians and B40 community in Malaysia, like we could get help from the government, right? As in like the government was giving some aid, but refugees
Mhm.
are not allowed to work in Malaysia. So who's going to help them? If they didn't earn any money, they literally would starve, right? So it was so gratifying for us that we were able to help like refugees earn money, during a difficult time. And 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 I think it also helped open the eyes of many Malaysians that refugees, as much as people are so negative about refugees and migrants and immigrants in Malaysia, saying things like all the xenophobia and asking people to go back to where they
Mhm.
come from, blah 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 blah. I mean, it's like these people, these refugees, came in to help our country in a time when we needed help, you know? So this is why we should not be we should not have all these like sentiments of difference, and that's why for me, like when in our team, like we treat all the artisans that we work with equally. Like we work with different races, different religions, we work with different Orang Asli groups, we work with refugees, we work with a lot of different types of communities, because to us it's very important that we're not selective about, it's not based on race, it's not based on religion, it's based on need, and it's based on, the skill and the heritage that the artisan is working on. And that's how we decide what products we should make and how we should work with them and who we should work with.
Right. That's pretty cool. When we, or I should say, most Malaysians tend to not accept refugees sometimes, or they have a different view. And when we needed help, they were there. And
Yeah,
at the end of the day, it's a
exactly.
win-win-win,
It's
right?
just one human helping another human. That's really what it is. It's like, don't look at color, citizenship. It's just, another human being needs your help. Are you going to help or not? What can you do? Do the best that you can to help them. That's it. You know, I mean, we even got comments like, "Why aren't you helping Malaysians? Why are you helping refugees?" And my answer to that was, we are helping Malaysians. We are helping frontliners. I mean, with the PP project and with all our products, we make products with Malaysian artisans and we make products with refugees. And we've actually started making a lot of our products hybrid products. So like part of the product is made by refugees and part of the product is made by Malaysians. So we created a one Malaysia product that combines both together, so that people can't complain anymore. So that was one of
It-
the things that we started doing. We called it our peace products, because we're like, we want to create peace. We want people to be peaceful, to value diversity and to respect each other. So, it's not about only helping your own kind. Yeah.
Mm. And although Malaysia is definitely making significant progress, but still we need a lot more education to get all those deep within the hearts of society, I believe. Don't you think?
Absolutely. I mean, I can say that for myself. I mean, I'm Indian, I'm Malaysian. I mean, sometimes even I am not treated equally in my own country, and there was another question that a lot of people ask: why did you come back? Why bother being in a country where you are valued on your race and not on your contribution, or it's not merit based, or it's not egalitarian? So my answer to that is that when I was living abroad, I used to complain a lot about Malaysia, like, oh, Malaysian leadership, Malaysian this, da da da. And again, are you going to be a complainer, or are you going to go and be a change maker? So I decided, okay, I'll stop complaining. If I want to see change, if I want change to happen in this country that I love, I have to be a part of that change. I can't just expect other people to do it. I have to do it myself as well. I have to contribute. So, and that's what I believe. I think that if you want to create change, you need a nucleus, right? You need a nucleus of people doing good. If you only have one person doing good, that person will burn out and die off. But if you have a group of people who are doing good and you create a nucleus of good, then that nucleus can replicate and create other nuclei. So
Right.
that's how you create more good. But you need a group of people who will come together and start something.
Right. I think that's really beautiful the way you put it. Having a nucleus and to constantly build more leaders to do the same or to do things even better. Wow,
Yeah.
very insightful. All right, we are approaching towards the end, unfortunately. And although I really, really enjoyed this conversation, I want to ask you something. This is for the young entrepreneurs out there. I mean,
Yeah.
you're someone who've already passed through all of the initial setbacks, downfalls, and all of those.
Hey, it's not
For
over,
those,
man.
well,
There's
I'm sure you've
always
got your own
challenges,
battles,
always
other fires
setbacks.
to put out.
Yeah.
Right, but it's safe to say that the moment that you realize that, hey, if I could go through this particular event, I can go through anything, right? I'm pretty sure that the moment you felt one of the lowest points, that look, I've been through that, so I can go through anything now. I guess that's kind of the tipping point. The moment when one reaches that point, it just
Yeah. I
falls
mean,
through.
I guess there are different levels to that, in the sense that I don't think you ever get to a stage where you think like, oh, I've experienced everything and like nothing
But at
can hurt
least,
me anymore. But
there would be one significant event, right? I would think.
yeah, I mean, I definitely feel more at peace about Earth Air now than I did like, in the first 3 years when I was really struggling with the business model, struggling with why I was doing what I was doing and whether we were ever going to make enough money to be sustainable. Like, I mean, I definitely feel a lot more at peace now for sure. Um, but life always keeps throwing challenges at you. I mean, I lost my father last year, and that was a
I'm so
challenge that
sorry.
I never expected, right? And I mean, not that I never expected. I mean, of course, everyone dies at some point, but I was not ready for it at that point in my life. And that was very hard for me. And I struggled with, again, why am I in the world? What am I doing with my life? Things like that, because like my father was a huge part of my life. And so I kind of struggled with what's the meaning of life without him and things like that. Um, so, now that I've experienced that, I'm not going to say that, if I experience another death, I'm not going to be I'm not going to be affected. Of course not. But the fact that, I got through that, and, I feel more human now, like gives me the confidence. Like once you've gone through the process, yes, that's true. So any challenge and difficulty that you've gone through, it gives you greater confidence that you will have this, you could have the strength to go through something worse or something similar. That somehow you can get through it, lah, because this time last year, I was not in this space of, like, I was not like this talking, like, I would not be like this right now, smiling and talking to you. Like, I was in a very different frame of mind. And I mean, I'll admit this, lah. I mean, I actually at points thought I felt suicidal, because I just felt like I didn't want to live anymore. Because I was like, oh, why am I here? Like, I was actually quite depressed when I lost my dad. So yeah, so I think whatever it is that life throws at you, the key is, I mean, if I can use my dad's words, I mean, it may sound cliche, but this is what is on his grave, actually, is be bold and never give up. Because that's what he used to tell us when we were growing up. He always said, be bold and never give up. So in a way, like, as depressed as I was at that point, what I thought about was my father, because I thought he had sacrificed his life to leave a legacy in me. So I want to honor him by continuing to live a good life and continuing to do the good that he has done. And hopefully I'll leave a deposit in someone else's life, and that's, I guess, a cycle of life. Yeah.
Wow. I'm just processing all that. And I'm sure he would have been really, really proud to see your journey. I mean, looking back, right?
Yeah. So to all the young people, spend time with your parents. Love them,
Mm-hmm.
because, really it's a gift to have your parents with you. As much as when you're young, you're like, ugh, parents are so old school and annoying and irritating. I mean, I know that because I was like that too. I was very rebellious and I used to fight with my parents, and but as you get older, you realize, as you get to know your parents as an adult, you really appreciate them and appreciate what they have done for you, and and so it's love them lah, appreciate them while they are with you.
Got it. Got it. Cool.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. And then bringing that all in. And yeah, I guess above all, right, whatever we do, keep family first, and never take things for granted.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, Sasi, we
All
are
right.
approaching towards the
Thank
end
you. Sorry, it's
of our
gone for like
session.
more than an hour.
No, 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 absolutely not. I mean, I really enjoyed. I have to tell you, usually we talk to our team and then we have a lot of one-on-one conversations. But today I felt very, very, I felt like we got a little bit personal, especially with you, and just to hear things, directly from you without reading it anywhere, straight from you, and the fact that you've gone through so much and you're still kicking, still pushing on, and who knows what the future lies to. It just tells me that no matter what happens, constantly keep moving forward.
Yes. Yeah, and I mean, and if anyone has any other questions that have not been answered, please send us a message on Instagram or Facebook, and we'll try to
Of
answer
course,
those.
of course. Of
Yeah.
course. For our audience members listening in, I'll definitely link everything in on Earth and on Sasi's profile and all of that. So if you wish to engage more or to pause on your questions, feel free. I must tell you that I really enjoyed this conversation, and I bet you will too. All right then. So, Sasi, take care. Have a
Thanks,
good night.
Vishaka.
I
Good
really
night.
enjoyed
Take care.
speaking to
Bye.
you,
Bye.
and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.
See you soon. Bye.